Welcome back. We are turning our attention back to Florida, where redistricting has scrambled today's primaries, including in the 20th congressional district, where a crowded field of Democrats is looking to unseat 11-term Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. The 20th district has long been represented by a black Democrat, and her decision to run there after her current district was essentially eliminated has angered some candidates and black leaders in the party. Joining me now is one of the candidates in that race, the former Broward County Mayor Dale Holness. Mayor, thank you for being here. Voting is already underway. Just talk to me about how you're feeling about this race. What's your message to folks who may have not gone to the polls yet?
Well, I was actually out at the polls. I came in to do this. You see me dressed in my uniform for getting voters out. Those who have not come out yet need to know that their vote is their voice. And if they want to have a voice in what happens in our country, they need to be at the polls, voting. It's a bit slow, but people are coming out now. Today, we are pushing. We're making phone calls. I was out at several of the voting sites. We're knocking doors still. We're doing what we need to do to get the vote out. It's sad that we are in this situation. And you said that her district was eliminated. It was not. 40% of the district that she lived in now is 22, where she could actually win the election. Biden won it by 3% in 2020, Trump by 10 in 2024. But the state has swung away from Trump and the Republicans since then by an average of 17%, 22% in Matt Gaetz's seat in District 1, 16% in District 6, where Fine now has, and in Trump's home, in House District 87 for Florida House, a 17% swing away from the Republican. It's unfortunate that it seems more expedient to come into this race. And by the way, we're out at the same poll for a long time today, both of us trying to get votes.
Well, let's talk about the Congresswoman's role in all of this. She's gotten quite a bit of pushback from this decision, but she's tried to make the argument that she would bring her congressional experience and her seniority to this seat. What would your response be to that?
My response would be that's why she should have run in 22, because that could help the Democrats take the House back and make Hakeem Jeffries the Speaker of the House. She is more poised because she had more money. She raised $3.3 million. I raised the most at almost $400,000. No one else raised or had that much money in order to take on District 22, where a Republican will now probably have a better chance. Had she ran there, we would have kept that seat and pushed back on Trump and DeSantis' effort to reduce the people's choice as to who their representative is for those two districts.
All right, let's talk about representation. And obviously, there's a concern about the lack or the dwindling number of African Americans in Congress. I know it's something the Congressional Black Caucus is very concerned about, especially given recent court rulings. In this situation here, do you think it was a missed opportunity for you and the other black candidates in the race to not consolidate around a single candidate? I know there were discussions about that. Do you wish that you had done that to provide a better shot at an African American winning this race?
You're absolutely right. And in those meetings, I offered to be the person who would step out if data showed that I was a weaker candidate than any of the others. In fact, at the time, I had $312,000 in the account. No one else had more than $23,000. That, facing someone with, at the time, $2.8 million, didn't make sense. There was no polling data that showed me behind. I actually qualified by petition, which means the community signed documents to say I should be the one. None of the others had that. I have the experience of being the mayor of Broward County, 2 million people at the time of COVID. Saving lives. We had less deaths in Broward County than they did in Miami-Dade or Palm Beach County because I brought the community together, leaders from every segment of our community to face that virus down and to ensure that we save lives and protect livelihoods at the same time, not shutting down our county totally.
Let's talk about redistricting. That's obviously played such a significant role in this race and other races around Florida. It's going to have an impact on who holds the majority at the end of these midterms. We've seen other blue states respond by gerrymandering their states to make their districts more favorable to Democrats. Do you think that's the right response, or should there be some sort of even perhaps federal level intervention to prevent this mid-decade redistricting and try and move toward a more independent redistricting effort?
Well, I think that what we're doing as a nation is not the right thing. We shouldn't be choosing who the voters are. We should allow them to choose us. So I would say both of us. But as a Democrat, you can't surrender to what the other side does. You have to go fight back. And that's what the Democrats are doing. We didn't initiate this war of redistricting, of gerrymandering. They did. And for us to then lay down our arms and say we won't do anything makes no sense to me as a Democrat. When we need to have people in office that care more about the American people than about mega corporation, than fighting wars, which has driven up the cost of our living. Gas prices gone crazy. This administration is doing some reckless things that are hurting our economy. They have brutalized Americans who stand up for their immigrant neighbors. It is wrong what's going on here. And I tell you, our economy is not going where it needs to go. We need to make sure that we have people in office of diverse background. Lived experience in representation is important. Diversity and inclusion strengthens us. It doesn't weaken us at all. And what this administration is doing to roll back the voice of the people is not right. What the Republicans are doing to roll back the voice is not right. But again, we need to make sure that we can get to 218 seats to take the House back and to put policies in place that put people first. Yeah. That's what I've been about in my 18 years of service as a public servant to the people of South Florida, serving as a commissioner and as mayor of Broward County, growing the economy, providing service for those who need it most, because we're running out of time. Helping to grow businesses.
Can I ask you just one quick question before we go? And we only have about 30 seconds, less than that.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, there's been a kind of a struggle in your party right now between the progressive wing and the moderate wing of the party. What will you do to bring those two sides together to unite as Democrats moving forward?
Well, if we focus first on getting results for the people, not necessarily being ideologues, but finding a way forward. And there are times when you have to compromise in order to get to where you need to do. When I passed the additional homestead exemption to reduce the taxes for seniors, it took me 2 tries to get the whole thing. I did a half first and then another half to ensure that our seniors' taxes on their property was reduced. And a Republican joined me in that. So we can find common ground, but we should not surrender our principles. We should not surrender what's in the best interest of the American people. And too often, the Republicans have lost touch. They're out of touch with the reality of the cost of living that people suffer through. They're out of touch with how we grow our economy, not by giving $1 trillion tax cut to the wealthiest people. When President Clinton did a tax reform, it put money in the middle class pocket and it grew our economy, balanced the budget.
All right. We got to go. We got to go, Mayor. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Good luck tonight. We appreciate it. We'll have you back if you win. And we'll, of course, be tracking this race going forward. Thank you, sir.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.